2 Samuel chapter number 16. I've never preached this passage of Scripture, but I want to allude to it or end up at it. I'm going to preach a story from 2 Samuel chapter 9, but I'm going to end up in 2 Samuel chapter 16. Is that all right? If my counting is right, that's about 7 chapters I'm going to preach this morning. I'm joking. I'm joking. 2 Samuel chapter number 16, verse number 1. When David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of donkeys saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 of summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. And the king said unto Ziba, What meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, The donkeys be for the king's household to ride on, the bread and the summer fruit for the young man to eat, and the wine that such as be faint in the wilderness may drink. And the king said, And where is thy master's son? Here's what he's asking, where is Mephibosheth? And Ziba said unto the king, Behold, he abideth at Jerusalem, for he said, Today shall the house of Israel restore me the kingdom of my father. Then said the king to Ziba, Behold, thine are all that pertained unto Mephibosheth. And Ziba said, I humbly beseech thee that I may find grace in thy sight, my Lord, O King. I'm going to stop reading right there, and you all may be seated. I want to preach this morning on this scripture that I just read. Hallelujah. Where is thy master's son? Is that okay? Where is thy master's son? In order for us this morning to understand, you may, Brother Pete, want to turn me down just a tad, if you will, especially in the house speakers. In order for us to understand, that's good, 2 Samuel chapter number 16, we have to allude back to chapter number 9. Something has taken place there, and a very familiar passage of Scripture is found there. Saul, the king of Israel, has been chosen by the people. The Bible began to, up to this time, they had had judges in the land. You will remember some of the judges by the name of Deborah, others judges by the name of Samson. Those men and women had ruled Israel by judging the people of God. They had been placed there by the council of Israel in order to be over the people of God, and any matters that were weighty came before the judges of those days, and they were given the right to judge those matters and settle the score, if you will. But all of a sudden, Israel's mindset begins to change. The people of God begin to murmur and complain, and now they want a king that they can see. God had been ruling from heaven, and through the mind of judges had been ruling the people, but now Israel says, we want a king that we can see. We want somebody we can identify with. And so God begins in His infinite wisdom to say to them, well, then pick one out. If you do not want me to rule, if you don't want me to choose the king, then you choose the king. And the Bible says that there was a man by the name of Saul. Saul was, according to the Word of God, a head taller than all the other men in Israel. And so all the people of Israel and the council of Israel got together. This was a goodly man, the Bible said, one striking in looks, one that looked like a warrior, a man that looked like somebody could go out and fight the battle, so we'll choose him. And the Bible said they chose Saul. They placed him over the kingdom, but in the heart of God, God had never chose Saul. Yet because the people chose him, God anointed him to be the king over Israel. Saul reigned in jealousy. He reigned in anger. He reigned with malice in his heart. And the Bible said there come a day when Saul went out to battle that he did something so crazy, not like a warrior, not like a man of war. The Bible said that in the midst of the battle, he was running from fear of the Philistines, jerked his own sword out, placed it on the ground, and fell upon his own sword. In other words, he commanded committed suicide on the battlefield fighting for God's army. There was a young man by the name of David, already anointed to become king. I feel the preacher coming up in me now. Already anointed to become king. Now takes the throne of Israel. He's going to be the anointed. He is God's man for the hour. He is the one after God's own heart. He's the one that God's anointed. He's the one God's poured the oil upon. He's going to take the throne, and it would be history for the new king to reach back in time and slay all of the family of the old king, lest one of them raise up and lead a rebellious revolt against the new king. But it was not in the heart of David to kill Saul's family. No, sir. But when David come to the kingdom, Saul's family rises up and flees the kingdom. And in the middle of them fleeing the kingdom, there is a 5-year-old boy. His name is Mephibosheth. There's nothing wrong with him. He's a young, strapping young boy. Just a lad by nature. Good-looking young boy. But his nurse, in fleeing from the king, his wrath, she picks Mephibosheth up and begins to run from the presence of the king. Can I preach and tell you this morning that humanity, every man, every woman sitting under the sound of my voice, has ran from the presence of the king before. If you're not right with God this morning, it's because you're running from the king. Our King Jesus is trying to call for you. He's searching for you. He's reaching out for you, and you keep running from him. Can I tell you this morning, you're scarred, you're messed up. There's things in your life that's turmoil and hurting and hardship only because you're running from the king. This nurse reaches down, picks up Mephibosheth, and on her way out of the kingdom, in her haste of running from the king, she drops that 5-year-old boy. And when she drops him, it breaks his legs. It cripples him. Can I ask you this morning, what dropped you? Who dropped you? Something happened in life to mold you and make you who you are. Why are you drinking yourself to death? Why are you smoking yourself to death? Why are you drugging yourself to death? Why are you selling your body to be used of men? You know why? Because somebody dropped you. Somebody failed along the way. But I came to preach to you about a God that'll never leave you, never forsake you. He'll never drop you. He'll hold you up and esteem you. He can change your life from what it is to what it can be. Mephibosheth is dropped at 5 years of age. It cripples his legs. Listen, every one of us under the sound of my voice have had somebody to drop us. I was dropped at 9 years of age. Not to embarrass my mom, but my mom and dad went through a divorce. It crippled me. It crippled me. My dad left the house. He ran from the house. He began to drink. My dad used to preach this gospel that I'm preaching. Are y'all hearing me? I'm telling you, there's a devil loose, and he don't care if you're outside the church or inside the church. We're common people. There's a devil loose that come to kill, steal, and destroy. But the next verse said, but I came. Jesus said, I come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. At 9 years of age, my mom went one way, my dad went another, and they dropped me. By the time I was 13, I was drinking and doing drugs. By the time I was 15, I was stealing cars. By the time I was 15, I was breaking in houses. Are y'all hearing me? I've not always been a preacher, but I came to tell you that no matter how far out in sin you are, there is a hand that can reach out there and get you and pull you into the house of God and clean you up and give you some life that's worth living. Not to go too far into my testimony, because I never like to give the devil praise. But you're looking at somebody that $300 and $400 a day, robbing and stealing, trying to get the fix Are y'all hearing me? Any kind of drug you could put in my body, I'd do it. It didn't matter. Somebody dropped me so I can identify with everybody in here. Mephibosheth was dropped. It wasn't his fault. Are y'all hearing me? It wasn't his fault. He was being carried. And something in life happened that dropped him. Somebody made a wrong decision. Somebody made a choice that affected his life. Are y'all hearing me? Never dreaming. That nurse never dreamed. She didn't mean to do it. She was a nurse. She was a caregiver. She was somebody that Brother Robbie cared about this young boy. And ain't it amazing that the very people that are supposed to care the most about us is the very ones that make the mistake of dropping us somewhere in that running, carrying that 5-year-old boy. She must have stumbled herself, maybe stumbled into a pothole running out of the city, or maybe stumbled over some brush trying to make it up the mountain. Whatever it was, she dropped that boy, and the rest of his life was never the same. The Bible said it crippled him in his legs, and apparently it crippled him so bad, are y'all hearing me, that later on, 20 years down the road, nobody could fix him, nobody could help him. The Bible said at 5 years of age, because they did not take him and have his legs fixed. Are y'all hearing me? Some things damage us, and because nobody cares enough to help us when we get damaged, it affects us years later down the road. I got dropped at 9, and I acted out at 17. Hear me? Are y'all with me? Somebody didn't take Mephibosheth and fix his legs when he was 5. You know what they done? The nurse took him to a land called Lotibar. Lotibar was the house of no bread, the house of famine, where your soul is hungry for something, but you can't get enough to fill it. I remember staying out all night and drinking from daylight to dark, and then drinking through the darkness. Are y'all hearing me? I remember drinking, getting drunk, and then drinking enough to get sober again. You ain't helping me. What I was trying to do was, the drinking wasn't the problem. I was trying to forget. I was trying to drown being dropped. Are y'all hearing me? Somebody didn't fix me at that point. They just let it go on. They let Mephibosheth just go on. They took him to the house of Lotibar, the house of famine, the house of no bread. And can I tell you that the bottom of a bottle, the end of the needle, the pill snorting up your nose, the methadone clinics, the street corner, the buddies, good time buddies, will not fill that void and that hunger that's in you. God put that famine in your heart so He could draw you to Him. The presence, my God, the will of the King is for you not to live in Lotibar in the house of famine. The will of the King is for you to live in the King's palace and around His table. Lotibar, listen. Cruelty. 5-year-old boy, they take him to Lotibar, the house, the place of famine, the house of no bread. They stick him. It wasn't bad enough that they stick him in the land of Lotibar. They put him in the house of Macar. Macar, that word means the house of disease and death. Imagine this, 5-year-old. They took that boy to the land of no bread, the land of famine. It wasn't good enough that they just left him in the land of famine. We're going to take you on, and I'm going to show you, Mephibosheth, what your future is. See, the devil has a plot. Anybody gonna help me preach this morning, but I'm here. The devil has a plot, and his plot is not to only take you to the house, to the land of famine or the house of no bread. He wants to take you all the way to where you have no vision for the future, because without a vision, men perish. Are y'all hearing me? Without you being able to see that you can have a life that's better than what you've had, you will perish with what you're doing. They took him to the house and the land of no bread, and then they took him to the house of disease and death. His outlook on life was, you're going to live here with this disease in your body, loathsome disease running out of you, all of that stuff, your body's infected. You're going to lay in a bed that's full of disease, and you're going to lay there in your stink and in your rot until you die. That's the plot of the devil. But Jesus has a plan. Woo! Man, I'm glad he had a plan. I remember waking up with my head over in the toilet and had puked so much that the side of my head was laying in the toilet in the puke I had just puked the morning before or the night before. Are y'all hearing me? I remember a buddy of mine I used to run with. He didn't change clothes for almost a month. He just stayed lit up all the time. His hair matted together. Because that's the lifestyle we were in. Tough guys. Woo. We were youthful and ignorant, immature. Thought life was about all that. 20 years go by. Mephibosheth is in the house of Macar dying. Disease, sores have broke out in those crippled legs. Sores that are bleeding and pulsating. Disease. When David says to Ziba, his high servant, is there anybody from the house of Saul that's left so I can bless them for God's sake and Jonathan's sake, Saul's son? And Ziba said, there's one. Everybody else has died off. There's one left, but he can't stand before you because you're the king, and it's unlawful for him to stand before you. And David said, why? David was told the story. When you came into the kingdom, his nurse picked him up at 5 years of age and stumbling up the hillside trying to run from your presence because they were fearful of you. She dropped him. He's crippled 20 years later. He's down in Lotibar. He's in the house of death and disease. He's waiting to die. And David said something that just makes me want to shout. And that is, David looked at Ziba and said, you go down to the land of Lotibar, to the house of Macar. You walk into that land of no bread. You go into that house of disease and death. And upon that bed where he's laying, you pick that young man up. You lay him up on the donkey. And you bring him back to the palace of the king. Today the favor of the king is on him. And don't say a word. Are y'all hearing me? The Bible said that Ziba left the presence of the king and went out to search for Mephibosheth. I want to preach and tell you this morning, you're not here by accident. You're not really here because somebody invited you. If you tell the truth, you're here because you're looking for something to fill the void and the famine. And I came to tell you that the King of Glory has sent the servant Ziba to where you're at. He's walked up to your bed, and the Holy Ghost is saying, if you'll come unto me, I'll give you rest. If you'll lay my yoke upon you, learn of me, my yoke's easy and my burden's light. If you'll come, it don't matter what sin you've committed, how bad you've been, how rotten you may have been, how much your sores stink. There's a God in heaven that'll love you, redeem you, change your life forever. I feel like I'm free. Ziba picks up Mephibosheth. lays him on the donkey, and takes him back to Jerusalem. David's mighty men are there. Listen to this. I remember walking in to the church the first time, the morning I got saved. I looked around the room, around that church, and I thought to myself, I had hair down to about my elbow. Ain't nothing wrong with that. If y'all wasn't so self-righteous, I'd still wear hair down to my elbow. I'm joking. I walked in there, and I remember looking around the church and thinking, I don't belong here. These are Christians. These are people that don't do anything wrong. These are people that are living perfect. After I got saved, I found out just a couple of weeks later that we that are Christians struggle. Are y'all hearing me? The difference is we got somebody to walk it with us. And I remember sitting there going, man, I don't belong here. There's the pastor. There's the singers. There's the mighty men of the king. David had summons those men. Ain't it weird that David would summons them to come to the palace on the same day Mephibosheth was supposed to arrive there? I'm almost led to believe that David wanted his mighty men to learn a lesson. Because sometimes we get so wrapped up in churchy stuff and self-righteous stuff that we forget that there's a world out there going to hell without God, and they need somebody to... He summons them. They're all sitting around David's table, and David's up at the head of the table. This is his kingdom. He's the king of Israel. He has the power of the kingdom. He looks down the table. All the mighty men that would sit on David's left and on his right, he stands up and says, scoot down one. I want that seat empty. They don't know what's in David's heart, and they don't know what David's about to do. But about the time they shift seats, there's an empty seat. Now around this table is men that have killed David's enemies. Has done things for the king that should be talked about. It's honorable. Are y'all hearing me? But none of that mattered to David that day. They're testifying around the table. Man, did you know I dove in a cave and killed a lion that was going to try to... One of them said. The other one said, I killed 300 Philistines with my bare hand. One at a time. Killed them. I did it for the king's sake. One of them said, I slew so many Philistines. I took a sword. I clave to that sword until they had to pry my hand off of the sword. I was so determined to fight for the king and for his goodness. All of a sudden, them two big doors to the dinner hall of the palace open up. And here comes Mephibosheth the cripple. He's dragging his legs behind him. He don't look like the rest of them. He's not got the suit and the tie on. He's not got the hair fixed just perfect. He's not the goody two-shoes that some of us try to make ourselves think we are. He's dragging his legs behind him. He's thinking in his mind, the king has called me back to Jerusalem and back to the palace so he can kill the last remaining family of Saul. But when the doors open, the king stands to his feet and turns to Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth, the Bible said, won't even as much as look up at the king. His head is down because he knows he's not worthy enough to be here in the presence of the king. But the king says to Mephibosheth, rise, raise your head up. He raises his head up. He looks at the king and he says to David, why do you look upon a dog like me? I'm an outcast. I'm nobody. I'm a failure. I've messed up. Somebody dropped me. Do you not know how many problems I got? Do you not know how many situations I'm in? Do you know what King David did. King David looked at him and said, that's what you used to be. You used to be a cripple. You used to be an outcast. You used to live in Lotibar. You used to be full of disease and death. But today your life's changing. I want you to come to the table. I want you to sit down on the right hand of the King. You are my friend now. You are in the house of the King now. You are here and you'll eat continually around the table. Let me preach on and tell you that when Mephibosheth got his chair scooted up to the table, from here up he looked just like all the others. His sin, his failure, his crippledness was hidden under the King's table. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Yes, I'm in the house of God, but God knows there's some crippled things still in me. Somebody ought to shout this morning. But He's allowed me to sit around the table. I'm drinking from His cup. I'm eating off His table. The goodness of the Lord is in my life, not because of things I've done for the King, but because of what the King done for me. Now let me get to my message. Ziba. Here's David. David said, Ziba, from this day forward, you are the servant of Mephibosheth. You and all your house. He is your Lord. A crippled becomes a Lord. He's your Lord, Ziba. He's going to rule your house. You're going to be a servant to Him. Don't let His table go empty. Don't let His cupboards go empty. Don't let His faucets go dry. Anything He needs, give Him new clothes. Get those legs healed up. Take Him to the right doctors. See, we think when we get saved that everything changes like that. No, we're just forgiven for sin. Healing is a process. Are y'all hearing me? There's things that I deal with still today, 27 years later after I got saved, that I'm dealing with today that I was scarred years ago with. Because healing's a process. But the servant, the Holy Ghost, is helping me to not be crippled. Listen to this. That's 2 Samuel chapter 9 is the story of Ziba being dropped, or Mephibosheth being dropped. When you come to 2 Samuel chapter 16, 7 chapters later, King David gets a visit from Ziba. And he brings to David some donkeys loaded with summer fruits and raisins and wine, bread. David looks at Ziba and says, now, this hit me this morning. The king has access to everything. Why would he need your bread? Or your raisins? Or your wine? Or your donkeys? See, can I tell you this, what Ziba was doing? Ziba was trying to get favor with the king by giving him gifts. We think in the church that we get favor with God by telling Him how good we can preach or how talented we are, how we can sing. Or look what I do for the church. And God says, none of your giftings, none of the things you can, I'm king, I've already got it all. You can't give me nothing that's going to blow my mind. Here's what I want you to give me, Ziba. He asked Ziba the question, what be the donkeys and why the summer fruit of raisin and why the bread and why the wine? And Ziba starts saying, well, the donkeys be for the king's sons to ride upon. King's sons don't ride on donkeys. King's sons ride on stallions. Are y'all hearing me? The wine is for those that's out in battle that get weary for them to take a drink. Drunk men can't fight. Are y'all hearing me? They want to. Years ago, I used to do a lot of fighting, and I did a whole lot better when I was sober than I did when I was drunk. Raisins. Who would want raisins? They're dried up grapes. He didn't even bring the grape. He brought the dried up grape. Here's what David said to Ziba. Ziba, I don't need your gifts. I gave you something to do 7 chapters ago. You were supposed to watch out for Mephibosheth and be a servant to him. It would mean more to me as a king for you to do your job than for you to try to find favor with me by giving me your gifts. Are y'all hearing me? Some of us need to realize the gift and calling we have and get in it and stay there. I'm called to preach. Everybody agree with that? You think I can give God a $100 bill and get out of the calling? See, God doesn't need our gifting. He needs us. He needs us to be a servant and say, okay, we're going to do what you said for us to do. If this church is packed out with people that need the Lord, it won't be because we can preach good, sing good, testify good, or take up an offering good. It will be because we do what we're supposed to do as Christians. You know what Ziba's number one job was? Love the cripple. Love the cripple. If there's one thing this church should be doing is we should be loving those that do not know Christ. I don't say that degrading. Let me tell you something. I love it with everything in me. If anybody knows anything about me, I love people that are outside the will of God. I was there. I identify with it. I understand the battle they go through. Do I get right with God? Do I not get right with God? Will I lose my friends? Will I not lose my friends? I'll tell you one thing I found out. My friends was only buddies as long as I had drinking money. Bobby, I want to share your Bobby's got a friend. Last Sunday turned 22 years old. He brought her to church a couple of times to try to lead her to the Lord. She sat right there beside of him, took notes the whole time I was up preaching, took notes. Thursday night, she took a cell phone cord charger in a hotel room, opened the closet door, and hung herself. 22 years old. He's all right. He's all right. You know why I said it? Listen to me. Somebody should have loved her. And you know the excuse? This was her excuse. 22 years old, beautiful young girl, had a future ahead of her. You know what her excuse was? Last Sunday was my birthday, and nobody told me happy birthday. We are losing a generation because we don't know how to love. We are so wrapped up in being churchy that we don't know how to reach out to somebody that don't know what we know or have what we have and reach out and say, we love you. But I will promise you that every single person in this building that is saved is in here because somebody loved you enough to say, come church with me. Let me tell you about Jesus. Somebody came to me. I had an aunt, my Aunt Pat. I'll tell this and I'm closing. 1986, Easter Sunday morning. I stumbled into my mom's house. I kicked the front door open in a drunken rage. Fell across the coffee table onto the couch. Mom was gone to work. I grabbed the TV remote and clicked the TV on. I'd been out all night drinking, doing drugs. Turned the TV on, and there was a guy on there. I didn't even know who Jimmy Swaggart was. I have a clue who he was. When I turned the TV on, there's this guy preaching. And for some odd reason, I just stopped and listened to him. He's fiery. I stopped and listened to him. And I remember today, 27 years later, what he was preaching on. He preached, the title to his message was Living Among the Tombs. He preached that message, and I laid on my mom's couch, drunk out of my head, and I watched him preach. For the first time in years, I felt like he was talking to me. Like, right through that TV screen, he was saying, if nobody else cares, I care. Then he told me how much Jesus cared. Then he walked over and he said, for some reason I feel like I should sing this song. He walked over and sat down on the piano and started playing. And he played this song, Born Again, there's really been a change in me. Born again just like Jesus said. Born again and all because of Calvary. I'm so glad that I've been born again. That was the chorus of it. I laid on my mom's couch with tears. The first time I'd cried in years since I was a 9-year-old boy. Tears run down my face. I thought, what in the world's going on with me? About 8:30 that morning, the phone rung, and my Aunt Pat, I picked up the phone. I said, I knew who it was. You know, we had caller ID. I picked the phone up, and I said, Mom ain't here. You know how you are. My Aunt Pat and her soothing voice back then said, Jody, I didn't call to talk to you, Mom. It's Easter Sunday morning. I called to invite you to go to church with me. I said, I ain't going to no church. I mean, you're just rude, obnoxious, trash. She said, Jody, I love you. I love you. I jumped up off my mom's couch. I slammed the phone down. Love. Who's ever loved me? Y'all hear me? The whole time I was asking the question, who's ever loved me, I was stumbling to the shower. Climbed over in that shower. Took a shower. Got sobered up a little bit. You hear what I'm about to tell you. I got out of that shower. I called an old girl I was running with. Jerked that phone up and called her. I said, we're going to church this morning. She said, we're doing what? Her daddy was the road captain for the Black Widows Motorcycle Club from Florida. I said, we're going to church. Why are we going to church? I said, my aunt asked me to. She said she loved me and I'm going to go. And on the phone, that girl said, what's love? What's love? I said, I'll be by to get you in a little while. I hung the phone up. I said, be ready. Wear something decent. She showed up. I showed up to get her. She had jeans on with holes all in them. I didn't care. I showed up with all my Harley stuff on and had a Harley shirt on and said, if they don't have Harleys in heaven, I'm going to ride mine straight to hell. That's what I wore to church that morning. Proud of it. Show somebody how tough I am. On the way to church, when I dropped by to get her, I told her, I said, bring me out a quart of old charter whiskey. That's what her mama drank. She brought me a quart, and I drank on that quart all the way to church. Pulled into that church parking lot, backed my car in, and here come the pastor out. It's about time to get started. He come out, and I rolled my window down. I was sitting there drinking that old charter whiskey. And the pastor said, man, you're in the church parking lot. I said, well, I'll leave. Well, no, don't leave. We don't want you. We want you. Then I'm going to drink. When you ring the church bell, how many remembers the church bells? I said, when you ring the church bell, I'll come in. He got on his knees out in the gravel parking lot. I never will forget it. C.L. Fry got on his knees in the gravel parking lot and beat his fist into the gravel and said, my God, Darden, you're going to die and go to hell. Somebody's going to kill you out there. I won't tell you what else went on, but I got out of the car, took a handful of stuff, got out of the car, walked in the church, and singing didn't touch me. Preaching really didn't touch me. The guy got up and preached. CL didn't preach that morning. This other guy reached over and grabbed him by the arm and said, I know this guy. Sitting back here, said, let me preach. Pastor Fry said, okay, go ahead. Mike Merritt walked to the stage, opened the Word of God, and started preaching. I can't tell you anything he said except his closing statement. And here's what he said. God's not concerned with where you've been, how long you've been there, or how deep in sin you are. He's simply concerned with where you're headed. And I ran, to make a long story short, I ran to that altar. I went down a sinner. I came up saved. I still look the same on the outside, but something in me, Brother Jimmy, had taken control of my life. And ever since that day, I've never been the same. And you know what? What's weird? I have been faulted for this. People's not liked it, but I've continued on. One thing they always say about Jody Darden is he lets anybody come to his church. Thank God. Because I was at anybody. I don't care how they come in. I really don't. I'm concerned about how they leave. Been there. Done it all. And I'm telling you that the only peace you're going to find or hope in this life you're going to find is when you find Jesus Christ. As they sing this morning, this altar is open. God, I preached this way this morning because I don't want to see anybody go to hell. I love you. I love you. As we stand all over this building this morning and they sing, would you come to Jesus?